Yeah, hello guys. So in today's class we'll be discussing regarding the second chapter of module 4 with the title Embedded System Applications and Domain Specific. So what we have done in the previous class or what exactly was studied in the previous session was, in the previous session we actually looked into the characteristics and properties of an embedded system. So when I spoke about the characteristics, we studied somewhere regarding six characteristics or six general characteristics what an embedded system should be having, and also we studied some 6 plus 5 somewhere around 11 properties of an embedded system. So when we studied the properties of an embedded system, we divided those properties into non-functional properties and functional properties of an embedded systems. So all the 5 plus 11 topics what we have studied in the previous class are really important from the examination point of view, or you might be facing at least one of the questions with respect to either characteristics or functional properties or non-functional properties of an embedded systems. So in this session we are going to study regarding embedded system applications and how they are domain specific. So if I speak about this topic here, this was one of the first characteristics what we looked up yesterday. So when we checked up the characteristic yesterday, my first characteristic was saying that embedded systems are application and domain specific. So what do you mean by this application and domain specific? So when we speak about this application and domain specific, it means that an embedded system, whatever you are designing for a particular application and which is going to work in a particular domain, is going to remain specific, which means that an embedded system which has been designed for a particular purpose cannot be used for other purpose, or an embedded system which is working in a particular domain cannot be made to work in a different domain. So when I speak about a domain, your various domains may be like your consumer electronics, telecoms, automotives, or industrial control. So if you have designed an embedded system for consumer electronics, let's say you have designed an remote control, you cannot use that remote control as a control unit of an automotive device or automotive embedded systems, which means that it is application and domain specific. So we are going to study about this application and domain specific characteristic of an embedded system in today's session. So possibly what are the things what we need to do is, or if you say that embedded system is domain specific, the next question what comes to your mind is, sir, can you make it general, or can you make the domain general? Can you make an embedded system what has been designed for a particular domain work for a different domain? Yes, it is possible. You can make it work for a different domain. But if you have to work it for a different domain, or if you have to make an embedded system as a domain general, then probably you have to replace some of the general purpose computing systems with another system. What I mean to say is, probably the control unit what you can find inside the embedded system has to be replaced with the control unit of a different embedded system for which you are going to use that particular or for which you are going to use that particular device as. That is what this particular topic says, or uh, this particular title is all about. So if you probably want to make this particular, or if you want to make an embedded system move from specific to general, if you want to move from specific to general, the main thing what you have to replace in a specific embedded system or an embedded system is, you need to replace the control unit of that embedded system with a different control unit, because application will differ, right? For example, let us say that you had an embedded system what was used to measure the temperature. Now if you want that same embedded system to be working as a, or to be working in an air conditioner, then probably the entire control unit whatever you are using in the temperature sensing device should be replaced with the control unit that you are going to use for an air conditioner. That is what this particular sentence says, that it is possible to replace a general purpose computing system with another system which is closely matching with the existing system, whereas it is not case within embedded system. So the chances of replacing the control unit or chances of making your embedded system from specific to general is around 8 to 9%, provided the embedded systems are similar. If the embedded systems are not similar, then probably you cannot use it for a different purpose. That is what it says here. Here he is very clearly saying that, whereas it is not the case in case of an embedded system. In most of the embedded system, it is not possible to replace, or it is not possible to use an embedded system what is used for a particular application for a different applications. Embedded systems are highly specialized in functioning and dedicated for a specific application. As I said you, if you are using or if you are designed an embedded system for a specific application, you cannot use it for an other application directly, provided you do some changes in terms of its sensors, in terms of its control unit, or in terms of its transducers. So it says that embedded systems are highly specialized in the sense for a particular application. It is very specific for a particular application. Other than that application, you cannot use it. Suppose you want to use it, you need to change almost around 80% of the components. That is what people say, right? When you take your mobile phone to a shop, and if the repairer or if the person who is going to repair your mobile phone says that your motherboard is gone, then normally what he says is it is better you buy a new mobile phone, because motherboard will be costing around 80% of the cost of your entire device. That is what happens in case of your embedded system also. If you are planning to use your embedded system, or if you are planning to use your embedded system for multiple applications, then probably you have to change almost all the components. It may be your input devices, it may be your output devices, or it may be your main functional unit what is working in the embedded systems. So that is what is meant by the term application and domain specific. It is very specific, and it is very specific with respect to the domain, and it is very specific with respect to the application also. This is what we had discussed even in the previous session also. Moving on further, what we are going to do further is we are going to take some of the applications as an example, and we are going to check how basically they work, what are the input devices, what are the output devices, what are the control units, how do they basically work, whether the embedded systems designed by various vendors, are they of the same kind or are they of the different kind. The very preliminary embedded systems what most of us know nowadays is washing machine. So the basic function of your washing machine is to wash your clothes, spin the clothes and dry the clothes, right? It may be automatic or semi-automatic, but whatsoever it is, the functionality and the application and the domain in which it is going to work remains the same. So let us say, or let us see how basically this particular washing machine is built up, or what are the different parts of the washing machine with respect to its sensors, transducers or control unit. So basically, if you consider washing machine as an embedded system, this washing machine will be containing sensors, actuators, control unit, and the application specific user interfaces like keyboard and display unit, so that you can give the input and you can see what exactly is happening inside the washing machine, or what exactly is happening inside the embedded system. So what we are doing right now is we have considered washing machine as an embedded system, and we are just going to open it up, and we are just going to check out what are the various sensors that are present in the washing machine, what are the different control units, how do they actually work, what are the different transducers, and how a user can communicate with the embedded systems in case if it is needed. So normally when you consider an embedded system, your embedded system will be containing sensors, actuators are nothing but your transducers. Okay, your transducers are also called by the name actuators, and it contains control unit. Control unit is nothing but the central processing unit which will contain the control algorithm, and also the application specific user interfaces like keyboards and display unit. So this basically will be showing you what exactly is happening inside your washing machine. One can see all these components in the washing machine. Some of them are visible and some of them are not visible. So that is what this washing machine consists of. So let us just try to open up the washing machine. So as I said you, it should be having a control unit, it should be having some input devices, and it should be having some output devices, isn't it? So coming to the starting from the output device, the output device here are called as transducers or actuators. So your washing machine will be containing various transducers or actuators. The various actuators that are present in the washing machine are motorized agitator. Agitator is nothing but the motor which is going to spin the washing machine tub. So that is called as motorized agitator. Tumble tub. Tumble tub is nothing but the tub in which you are going to place your clothes and which is going to rotate the clothes. Water drawing pump. Water drawing pump is present inside the washing machine in order to draw the water from the tap as per the requirement, and also an inlet valve which will be letting the water flow to the washing machine as per the requirement. So these are all the actuator parts. The sensors what are present in the washing machine are water level sensor and level sensor. Water temperature sensor and level sensor. In fact, in some machines you might also find weight sensors. Weight sensors are used to measure or in order to weigh what is the maximum weight you have put into the machine. For example, if a machine is around 7.5 kg capacity, if the weight exceeds, then it shows that it is overloaded. So these are all the functions of the sensors which tells you or which gives indication to the control unit whether the process has to be started or whether the process need not be started. Coming to the control part, normally the control part will be consisting of a microprocessor or microcontroller based board with interfaces to the sensors and actuators. So basically you will have a microcontroller or microprocessor which has got interfaces to the sensors and actuators. So whatever inputs you are giving from here will go to the control unit which is made up of a microprocessor or microcontroller, and based on the actions or the inputs that is given by you people, the actuators will be performing the actual task. So this is a general overview of a washing machine. See how basically it works. The sensor data is fed back to the control unit and the control unit generates the necessary actuator inputs. Well known things, right? So input will be going via the sensors to the control unit. From the sensors my inputs will be going, and from here it goes to the control unit, and the control unit will be generating the necessary signals, and these signals will be going to the transducers. So this transducers will be performing the required action. It may be spinning your clothes, or it may be washing your clothes, or it may be drying your clothes. So everything will be happening depending on the input that goes from the sensors to the control unit. The control unit also provides connectivity to the user interfaces. So from here there are interfaces through which the user can interact with the control unit. So sensor will however give the input. Let me say that the sensor will give the input and your control unit will be washing the clothes, spinning the clothes and drying the clothes. Let us say that you do not want your clothes to be dried up. You want your clothes solely to be washed and spinned. So what you can do is you can give extra input through the interfaces what has been provided to the user on the keyboards, and through the keyboards you can give the input to the control unit and you can tell the control unit, even though the sensors are given is the input to dry the clothes, do not dry the clothes, just spin the clothes and stop the entire process. So that basically is a keypad for setting the washing time. For example, let's say that sensors will be setting the time of around 45 minutes, but you are pretty sure that you do not want your clothes to be washed for 45 minutes. You want your clothes to be washed only for 30 minutes because you are pretty sure that your clothes are not that dirty, right? So what you can do is you can give the input via this control board to the control unit and say just set the process, or give the input to the transducer so that the transducers will be performing the washing of clothes only for 30 minutes. That is why we have a keypad. Selecting the type of the material to be washed, like light, medium, heavy duty or etc. That's what I said. You want the clothes to be washed for longer time, or you want the clothes to be washed for lesser time. Your cloth is made up of cotton, your cloth is made up of nylon or anything. You can select the type of material what is to be washed in the machine. So all these functionalities are provided in the washing machine, which is a very beautiful example for your embedded system. User feedback is reflected to through the display unit and LEDs connected to the control board. So here you will have some LEDs also. So whatever inputs you are giving to the control unit will be reflected in the LED display that is present on the control board. That is, whatever inputs you are going to give to the control unit will be reflected in the LED unit that is present on the control panel or on the keyboard panel itself. So if you open up the washing machine, what are the different functional blocks that are present in the washing machine? So this is how your washing machine is going to look like, and I'm pretty sure that washing machine will be of two kinds. One is top loading, another one is front loading. We'll just check the differences between the top loading and front loading washing machine later, but right now we'll consider washing machine as a general embedded system, and we'll try to check what are the different parts or what are the different sensors what are the different actuators or what are the different control units and where are they placed in the washing machine. See here, this is your integrated control panel with the user interface through which you can give the inputs of your choice, or you can set the timings, or you can set the type of the clothes, or you can set whether you want your clothes to be washed for very long or you want the clothes to be washed for very less. Whatever inputs you are going to give through this particular control panel will be reflected in the LED display, which is once again present in the same board. Other than that, you have the level sensor. Level sensor is placed on the tub, which normally will be telling the water inlet pump to stop drawing the water from the inlet wall. So once the water has reached this particular level, then it will give the indication to the pump saying that stop. The water level has reached the required value here, so kindly stop it. And it will be having the water inlet wall. Water inlet wall is normally used to draw the water inside, and inside you can see a perforated tub that is present here, and you can see there is an outer tub. Outer tub is not the perforated one, only the inner tub is perforated one. So you're going to place your clothes here, and this inner tub and outer tub combinedly will be washing the, or it will be spinning. And there is a water outlet that is present here, which is used to let the dirty water after washing the clothes. And there is a body case which is normally used to close the entire embedded system, and you can find a temperature sensor here which normally will be indicating what is the temperature of the water that is flown inside. So this is the general block diagram of a washing machine. So they might ask you to draw a general block diagram of a washing machine along with the explanations whatever I have given to you right now. You need to be in a position to explain what are this particular, or why do I use various parts that are present here. Why do I use a control panel? Why do I use a level sensor? Why do I use a water inlet pump? What is the inner tub made up of? Inner tub normally will be made up of steel or aluminium, okay, with the perforated or with the some rough surfaces so that it can wash your clothes or your clothes can get clean. Also, it has got an outer tub in order to catch the water, and there is a water outlet. So once the washing has been done, the sensors will be giving the input to the control unit in order to open this particular water outlet. So once this water outlet has been opened, all the water will get dried away. We'll check the working of this later. So this is your general block diagram. See, it is given here. Washing machine normally comes in two models. One is top loading and front loading. The difference between the top loading and front loading is what you know. In case of your top loading washing machine, let's say that there are various clothes that are present here. So how your washing machine performs this, or how your washing machine cleans this, the clothes what are present on the top side will be pushed to the bottom surface, and the bottom clothes will be pushed to the top surface, and this is going to be repeated along with the continuous to and fro movements. In case of your front loading washing machine, how it happens is you have front loader here, so there will be water that is present here, so the clothes will be pushed inside and it will be drawn out, pushed inside and it will be drawn out. This is how your front loading and top loading washing machine works. So it's given here. In top loading models, the agitator or the tub of the machine twists back and forth, that is to and fro, and pulls the cloth down to the bottom of the tub. On reaching the bottom of the tub, the clothes work their way back to the top of the tub, where the agitator grabs them again and repeats the mechanism. So it will be moved down to the bottom and to the top. Also it will be like twisted to and fro. Whereas in case of your front loading washing machine, the clothes are tumbled and plunged into the water over and over again, which means that it is something like you have a bucket of water, you put the water to the clothes, you remove it out. You put the water to the clothes and you remove it out. This is how your front loading washing machine works. That is the first phase where your clothes gets washed. Whereas coming to the second phase of washing, in the second case of washing, what happens is water that is present or water that is left out after washing the clothes will be pumped out of the tub and the inner tub. So as I said you, there are two tubs here. One is the inner tub, which is perforated one, and other one is the outer tub. The inner tub will be rotated with the high speed using a centrifugal force to remove the water from the clothes. So it will be rotated at some RPM, at some hundreds of RPM, so that the water that is present in the clothes will all be wired away and it will be thrown out. Uh, Finally, what happens is in the last phase, suppose if your washing machine has got even the drying phase, what happens is it keeps on rotating the clothes with high speed. In some machines, what they do is they let some hot air blast move inside. After the cloth is completely, I mean, after all the cloth has been totally removed from the, after all the water from the clothes has been totally removed, then hot air blasts are let inside the tub so that your clothes get dried. But normally what happens is your spinning will continue until and unless the water content in the water, I mean in the clothes will come to a certain level. After it reaches a certain level, then normally your machine will stop rotating or will stop spinning. This is how your normal machine works. The general principle of working of a washing machine. The basic control unit. So as I said you, there are three things here. One is control unit, one is input, other one is output. Input is nothing but your sensors, output is nothing but your actuators. This is made up of microcontroller or microprocessors. So here the basic control unit, that is this one, will be consisting of a timer, cycle selector mechanism, water temperature selector, load size selector and start button. So these are all actually provided to the user, are provided to the user. So you can select any one of the things and you can give the input to the control unit in order to generate the required signals. The mechanism includes the motor, transmission, clutch, pump, agitator, inner tub, outer tub and water inlet. All these are parts of your transducer. Okay, so whatever output your control unit produces, those output signals will be given to the motor, transmission, clutch, pump, agitator, inner tub, outer tub and water inlet valve. So based on the signal that comes to this particular transducer, these devices will work. Maybe your motor will start rotating, or maybe your pump will start taking water, or your agitator will start moving the clothes up and down, or your inner tub will start rinsing away, I mean drying away the clothes. Whatever things or whatever signal comes from the control unit will be given to the transducers. The integrated control panel consists of a microprocessor control based board with input output interfaces and control algorithm running on it. So this basically is your control unit. What is present inside the control unit? Inside the control unit you will be having a microprocessor or microcontroller based board with input output interfaces. Input output interfaces means ports which are capable of taking the inputs and giving the outputs to the transducers, and this internally has got some control algorithms which is basically programmed so that your control unit functions properly as per the inputs given. So that is what your washing machine actually looks like. Input interfaces include keyboard which consists of a wash type selector, wash spin, rinse, cloth selector, light, medium, heavy duty and washing time setting and all the things. So thus all the things are provided in the interface board. On the top you can see an interface board, right? So using that interface board the user can give the input to the control unit as per his requirement. Always by default your machine is going to take some input. If you are not happy with those particular input, you can give the input or the user can give the input via the interface control board. The output interface consists of a LED LCD display, status indication LEDs etc. connected to the input output bus of the controller. So along with this inputs what you are going to give, there are LEDs present. So the LEDs are going to tell you what is the remaining time, what is happening, whether it is washing, spinning or drying, whether the water is going inside, what is the temperature, uh, what is the status of the water flow. All these things will be indicated by a display board which is provided on the washing machine. And kindly remember, not all the washing machine will contain or not all the washing machine looks same, but basically the internal working will be the same. It will have a control unit, it will have a input devices and it will have output actuators or transducers. The other types of input output interfaces which are invisible to the end user are different kinds of sensor interfaces. As I said you, temperature sensor, water sensor. Also you have actuator interfaces including motor control for the agitator and tub movement control, inlet water flow control. So all these are the things which will be indicated to the user. It is not that it is visible to the human eyes, but internally all these particular components are present inside your washing machine. This is regarding the general working of an washing machine, and remember almost all the washing machine is made up of this kind of sensors, this kind of actuators, and it is made up of a basic control unit. Maybe the microprocessor and the microcontroller whatever I am using in the washing machine may be different, but basically they all work same, or they were all work similar. And the general block diagram, uh, externally the visibility or the way in which your washing machine is going to look might change, but internally all the washing machine will be having all the components as it is shown here. So this is one of the example of your embedded system, which is application and domain specific. Moving on further, taking the second example. So that was a general domestic example what you have taken. The second one what we are going to take is automotive or domain specific embedded system. So whenever I speak about an embedded system, only 10%, 10 to 15% of the embedded systems are used in domestic applications. Almost around 60 to 70% of the embedded systems are used in the automotive industry, or it is used in the telecom industry. As it is said here, you may be using it in the consumer, industrial, automotive or telecom. But the major part of the embedded systems are designed or they are used in the automotive and telecom industry. So we will take one of the very simple example, that is we'll take a simple car as an example for an embedded systems, and we'll check how basically or what are the different embedded systems that are present in a car. So if you move to this particular car here, you can see there are various things. There is a engine that is present here. There are various instruments that are present here. There's an air conditioner. There's a power steering, airbag control, seat control, mirror control, power windows, suspension control. You can lift the car or you can increase the suspension of the things. Wiper control, headlamp control, ABS control, fuel injection control, fan control. So all the components, almost 80% of the components of the automotives or automobiles will be having a control unit, and almost all these control units are controlled using an embedded systems. Or you can say that almost all the devices what you seem to be very fancy, or what you feel that it is working very easily, are all made up of embedded systems. So let's take them one by one. Automotive embedded systems are the one where electronics takes control over the mechanical systems. The presence of the automotive embedded systems in the vehicle varies from the simple mirror and wiper control to the complex airbag control and anti-lock braking system. You can see that in some vehicles what happens is there are buttons what are provided inside the car, using which you can adjust the mirrors. You call it as electrical mirror system, in which you can adjust the mirrors up or down, left or right. And you can also, there are some cars in which the wipers will turn on as soon as the moisture content in the windshield increases, right? So these are all automotive or embedded systems. So basically there will be sensors which are placed on the windshield. As the moisture content increases, they give the control unit an input, and the control unit will be turning on the wiper. Or there are some cars in which the headlight turns on by itself. As soon as the light intensity decreases, the lights will turn on by itself. So all these are made up of embedded systems itself. That those are the simple ones. The complex ones are anti-braking system or airbag controller. So as soon as your car, or if a car meets with an accident, the airbag will come out automatically. So you're not going to turn it on, right? The airbag will come out automatically for your safety. So that is also an embedded system. So if there is a sudden shock in a body of a vehicle, the airbag opens up. That is how it works. Automotive embedded systems are normally built around microcontrollers or digital signal processors, or a hybrid of both. So if you're asking me, sir, what is the control unit of a automotive embedded system made up of? Automotive embedded systems are basically built up using either a microcontroller or digital signal processors. Digital signal processors are comparatively costlier ones, but they are known to be the very efficient embedded systems. And when it comes to the embedded systems in automotive industry, you do not call it as automotive embedded systems, you call them as ECUs, electronic control units. So electronic control units are nothing but the embedded systems of your automobiles. The number of embedded controllers in an ordinary vehicle may be varying from 20 to 40, whereas luxury vehicles may be having somewhere around hundreds of embedded controllers. That depends on the cost or the budget of the vehicle what you are going to purchase. So if it is the cheaper ones, probably the embedded control systems will be less. That is, maybe the wipers are not automatic, maybe the headlamps are not automatic, maybe there are no power windows, maybe there is no power steerings, maybe there are no airbags. So a lot of things. Based on the amount whatever you are paying, your system will have that many embedded systems. The first embedded system, when it comes to the automotive industry, it was launched in 1968 by the Volkswagen. So Volkswagen 1600 was the very first car which started using ECUs. ECUs means electronic control units or the automotive embedded systems, which was used for the fuel injection system. Nowadays, what happens is in case of your vehicles, fuel injection system happens automatically. Based on the throttle what you press, based on the accelerator what you press, the fuels will be injected to the uh, to the motors as per the throttles what you're going to open up, and that system is called as automatic or microprocessor based fuel injection system. Sometimes what happens is you'll be facing with the trouble that your vehicle is not turning on. That is because your microprocessor based fuel injection system is not turning on, or it is not opening up, or it is not giving the required fuel to the vehicle. So that is what, or that is where people started using the very first ECU. After that, they started using ECU in everything, maybe in the headlamps, temperature controls, moisture sensors, everything they started using. And the ECUs, what I'm going to use in my automotive industries, are basically categorized into two. One is high speed electronic control units, the second one is low speed electronic control units. No explanations needed for this both. High speed electronic control units are the ones where the margin for error is very less and the response is very fast, are deployed in critical control units requiring fast response, which are fuel injection system, anti-lock braking system, engine control, electronic throttle, steering controls, transmission control, central unit, airbag controls, and all the things, which are very critical. As soon as you press the brake, you want the car to be coming under your control. As soon as you turn on the key of your car, you want the fuels to be injected. You cannot wait, isn't it? Previously, what was happening was, in if you check out the Jeeps of 1960s or 1970s, there was something called as heaters. So what they used to do was they used to slowly pump the fuel to the engine and later they used to turn on. But nowadays, what happens is, no matter your vehicle has been parked for 10 days or 15 days, you can turn on the vehicle immediately. That is because of this particular fuel injection system which is built up using the microprocessor. When coming to the low speed electronic control units, these are the control units which are used in the systems which are not that critical. Maybe headlamps, maybe your wipers, maybe the window controls, maybe the seat controls, maybe the tail lamp controls, or maybe the sunroof controls. So they are not the critical ones. Even if they do not turn on also, there is nothing that is going to happen. You can do it manually. But in case of this high speed electronic control units, you cannot turn it on manually. It has to happen automatically itself. So basically the control units whatever I am going to use in my automobile industries are categorized into high speed and low speed. uh, Next thing, sir, how basically are they communicated, sir? You have a control unit in case of your automobile industry, you have sensors here, and you have output devices here. They have to be communicated, right? The sensors has to give to the input to the control unit, and the control unit has to give the input to the output devices. How are they communicated, sir? They are communicated using wires itself. But imagine a car which is having around hundreds of ECUs and hundreds of sensors and hundreds of output devices. They need to be interconnected. So there will be a lot of wiring work that has to happen. So in order to avoid this particular or extra wires in case of your vehicles, they use something called as automotive communication buses. So automotive applications make use of serial buses for communication, which greatly reduces the amount of wiring required inside the vehicle. Always your car will be full of wiring itself. If I am not going to use this automotive communication buses, then normally it will be full of wires. So normally what happens here is, to be frankly speaking with you people, they will have minimum number of wires, and the wires are used for multiple purpose. Various sensors are connected using same wires, and the control unit will be in a position to take a decision from where the input has come and which device has to be turned on. So basically there will be minimum number of wires, and this particular wires which are used for multiple applications in the automobiles are called as automotive communication buses. Some will be working very fast, some will be having very high data rate, some will be having medium data rate, and some will be having less data rate. So based on the data rate or the speed at which the data is being carried in this particular buses, they are normally categorized into controller area network, local area network, and media oriented system transport bus. So based on the speed in which it can carry the data. If you speak about the control area network, this is basically built, or this is basically designed by the pioneer of the automobile industry, by Robert Bosch. So if you speak about which are the who actually started developing this ECUs, the very first place even now goes to Robert Bosch or Bosch Industries. Bosch Industries are the pioneers in developing ECUs for any vehicles. So this is CAN is actually developed by Robot Bosch, which will be supporting a data rate of 125 kbps to 1 Mbps, where the data rate is comparatively very high, and this particular buses are used for your high speed electronic control units, which are very critical, which are having very critical applications. CAN is an event driven protocol interface with support for error handling in data transmission. Event driven means, suppose if there is anything happen, let me say that there is a accident that has happened. So suddenly the sensor should be giving the signal to the control unit, and the control unit should be giving signal to the airbags to open up, which means that it should be very fast. So that is what is meant by event driven protocol. There is lot of moisture on the windshield, you want your wipers to be turned on. It is gone dark and you want the headlights to be turned on. So that is what is meant by event driven protocol. And what it does is, this particular bus will be having a error handling in data transmission. Even if there is a small error that is happening in the data transmission, your devices are not going to be affected. It is generally applied in the safety systems like airbag, powertrain systems, and engine control, anti-lock braking system, and all the things as it is explained. The second one is local internet interconnect network. This is basically used for low speed communication. Low speed communication means somewhere around 20 kbps, which is not that critical. So here what happens is, it's a single master. Your control unit is going to be the single master, and from here you will have the multiple devices connected. So single master and multiple slave communication interface. So this normally is used in your mirror controls, fan controls, seat position control, window controls, and all the things. So LIN bus follows the master communication triggering technique to eliminate the possible bus arbitration problem that can occur by simultaneous talking to different slave nodes connected to a single interface bus. So for example, let us say that this is of wiper, this is of headlamp, this is of windows, this is of seat. Now let me say that it has gone dark and there is a lot of rain falling also. So now what happens is, which one should be turned on, or which device has to be turned on first, whether the wiper or the headlamp. So this buses will be taking the priority of the signals to the control unit, and the control unit will be taking the necessary action. So probably what it will do is, it will turn on the wiper first and it will turn on the headlight immediately. So maybe there is some around fractions of seconds of gap that is happening between the action that has been taken by the control unit. This is the second one. This is most is media oriented system transport bus. So this is normally used in European countries for the cars. So it is actually a multimedia fiber optic point-to-point network implemented in star, ring, or daisy chain topology. So I need not explain you what is the star, ring, or daisy chain topology. So basically it is all about interconnection between the various components as well as the control unit. So this basically is not that effective, or it is not that critical, or it is not that important in case of your vehicles, but this has been employed. For example, let's say that you want to watch the audio and video. Normally only for the very non-critical applications, or maybe for the applications which are not at all necessary, I'll be using this particular network. Maybe in order to view the image what is behind your car, maybe to in order to listen to the music, or in order to listen to the video. Normally I'll be using this particular network or this particular bus. That is what is called as media oriented system transport bus. Okay, this is not that important part for us, but still let us know key players of the automotive embedded market. Who are the very prominent players in the market who manufacture ECUs? So here basically your ECUs, if I speak about ECUs, the top position goes to Bosch. After that, there are a lot of people who are going to manufacture the ECUs, or manufacture the various components of the ECUs, or they actually market the components of the ECUs. Let's take them one by one. there are various key players. But among these key players, I'll be categorizing these key players into silicon providers, tools and platform providers, and solution providers. So even though you say that Bosch is going to manufacture ECUs, actually Bosch will be coming under the last one, solution provider. He actually will not be manufacturing the entire things. He is not the person who is going to do the entire things. So when you go and ask for a ECU in the market, the ECU actually whatever you are getting in the market, or the embedded system for the automotive industry, what you are getting in the market has not been manufactured by a single manufacturer. It has been manufactured by three different people. The first one is a silicon provider, the third one is a tool and platform provider, the third one is a solution provider. Now what are the different functionalities of these three people? We'll check out here. So what is silicon provider doing? Silicon provider will be providing the necessary chips which are used in control application development, which means that he will provide you the necessary microcontroller or microprocessor which is used to manufacture a embedded system. It is a dummy one. Dummy in the sense you say that sir, this is my requirement. Give me a microprocessor or give me a microcontroller. You will say I want an 8-bit microcontroller, or you will say I want a 32-bit microcontroller with so many input ports, with so many output ports. So all those particular specifications you need to go and tell with the silicon provider. The silicon provider will be giving you the necessary chip as per your requirement. So who are the people who are going to, or who actually play, are the market leaders? So basically here you'll be having in case of this, you have Analog Devices. Analog Devices is a company. You have Xilinx. You have Atmel. You have Maxim. Maxim right now it is called as Dallas. You have NXP Semiconductor. You have Renesas. You have Renesas here. You have maybe Fujitsu. Texas. Lot of people provide you the required components. They provide you the required components, or they are the silicon providers. Coming on to the next one, that is tool and platform providers. What are they going to do? So you have the microprocessor now. You have the microprocessor or microcontroller right now. So what you need to do is you need to load it with the required program. You need to load it with the required program and you need to test it, right? So this tool and platform providers basically will be giving you the various tools and real-time embedded operating systems for developing and debugging different control unit related applications. So basically this falls under two categories. One is embedded software application development tool and embedded hardware development tools. So whatever program you need to write, you can dump into this program and you can test it here. So that is basically provided by this particular people. This people, tool and platform providers, will be doing that particular task. You need to connect some hardware devices and you need to test it. So almost all the testings with respect to the software and hardware are done by these people, tool and platform providers. That is the basic functionalities of this particular people. In case of this, you have something like ENIA. ENIA is one company. MATLAB. You have Keel. You have Lotte Bosch. You have Microsoft. Lot companies are providing you the required tool and platforms in order to test the hardware and software. Finally, solution providers. Solution providers are the one who is going to take the microcontroller, who is going to take the sensors, who is going to take the actuators, connect them together, and they are going to provide you the solution. Let me say that, sir, I want a embedded control unit in order to turn on my wiper automatically. I want an embedded control system in order to turn on my headlamp automatically. All that particular applications will be given by the solution providers. So basically here, this is where your Bosch is working. Bosch, you have Infosys, you have Delphi, you have maybe I can say Denso. So all these people are the solution providers. So what they do is they normally go to the silicon provider, they go to the tool and platform provider, and once they are done with the application part, they will combine them together and they will give you the required things. That is what happens in case of your solution provider. So these are the basic things what we need to know in the second chapter of your module 4. Thank you.